Hello everybody, it's Brian for GadgetUnit.com, and in this video I'll be bringing you my video review of the Nokia Lumia 2520 Windows RT based tablet. I'd like to thank AT&T for handing this over to me for review purposes, and if you are interested in picking this up for yourself, it is available from AT&T for $569.99 without a contract, or it's $100 cheaper if you do opt for a 2-year contract. It's not available in a Wi-Fi only model, so you can only get it with cellular capabilities. In terms of specs, the tablet features a 10.1-inch 1920 by 1080 Full HD clear black IPS LCD display with Gorilla Glass 2, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 quad-core processor at 2.2 GHz, 2 GB of RAM, 32 gigs of internal flash storage, and it is expandable by up to 64 GB via microSD, an 8120 mAh battery, USB 3, Bluetooth 4, Wi-Fi 802.11 ABGN, NFC, micro HD, 3.5mm headset output, micro SIM. The rear-facing camera is 6.7 megapixels, while the front-facing camera is 1.2, and this does run Windows RT 8.1. In terms of design, it very much represents Nokia's other Lumia devices, and that's not such a bad thing. The main frame is made of a unibody polycarbonate construction, and it feels pretty good in the hand. It has a nice soft touch feel to it, and with this sort of texture, you should be able to fight back on scratches, but not so much on fingerprints or smudges. Those will still be a problem after a while. On the back, you'll have the 6.7 megapixel rear-facing camera, NFC pad, some branding, as well as a microphone. The bottom has a dock area that you could use with Nokia's optional and expensive at $150 power keyboard, which is essentially a full case for the tablet with an integrated battery, keyboard, and trackpad. On the right, you'll find the USB 3 port, and you can only use this with an on-the-go or OTG adapter, but the one that I had that works with Android devices does not work with this tablet, unfortunately. There's also a micro HDMI port. On the other side of the device is the 3.5mm headset jack, as well as a 2.5mm charging port. So if you're hoping to use your stack of micro USB cables for charging, you will not be able to do so. Along the top edge is a tray for the micro SD and micro SIM cards, and in order to remove the tray, you'll have to use a paper clip, which is unfortunate for people who want to regularly swap out their micro SD cards. There's also a power button and the volume rocker. And on the front, of course, you have your 10.1-inch display, a touch-sensitive Windows/Home key below that, dual front-facing speakers, a microphone at the top, some light sensors, as well as your 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera. Nokia's displays are generally really good, and that's certainly the case with the Lumia 2520. It can get as bright as you want, and it can also get as low as you want, depending on the lighting conditions that you're in and however you want to view your display. Viewing angles are some of the best that I've seen on any display. Touch response is accurate and quick, and thanks to Gorilla Glass 2, you don't have to worry too much about scratches, but screen protectors are available if that's what you'd like to go for. One thing I have noticed is that there is some screen bleeding, pretty noticeable actually, especially when you're looking at dark images, or let's say the entire screen is black. You'll definitely be able to see the screen bleeding, much like when the iPad 2 first came out. There was some negative press about that. Most devices do have some sort of screen bleeding, but for me, at least in my experience, this was much more noticeable on the Lumia 2520. In terms of software, this does run Windows RT 8.1. If you're unfamiliar with Windows RT, think of it as Windows 8.1, but slimmed down a bit for more mobile-optimized tablets. That's also really easy to use. Because of that, you get a nice touchscreen interface in addition to the classic desktop, which can still be used for Microsoft Office, which does come pre-installed, Internet Explorer, and some of your other Windows-based applications. You can't just go online and download an exe file and expect to run it. That's because of the processor architecture that this tablet uses. There are Windows tablets that use traditional Intel processors, in which case you will be able to run any Windows application that you'd like, but this tablet does not do that. There are plenty of applications to choose for in the Windows Store, many of which are free or paid, but unlike iOS and Android, Windows Store apps do sometimes offer trials, so you can use an app for X number of days before deciding whether or not you'd like to purchase it. This tablet also runs Flash, which not many others do, and it runs it rather well. This could be a problem for websites that have lots of Flash ads, because it will run down your battery quicker than without Flash ads. But for the most part, Flash does work as you would expect it to on your desktop or laptop computer, and it works in both the Internet Explorer, the desktop version, as well as the Metro Touch version of Internet Explorer. In addition to your stock Windows RT apps, Nokia has some of their own apps, as well as AT&T. You can uninstall any of the applications that come installed and reinstall them later from the Windows Store if you need to. The device does have 32 gigabytes of internal storage, but you have about less than 20, if I remember correctly, after you get Windows set up. You do have a micro SD card slot that you could put all of your media content and documents onto. You can't put applications onto it, unfortunately, so you are limited in terms of how many apps you can install from the Windows Store. I was able to load it up with my entire iTunes library and still have plenty of space left over for some apps and games and things like that. Performance was something that I was worried about from the get-go, but once I actually started using it, I was incredibly surprised by how quick this was, especially considering the tablet is using a processor that's mainly geared for smartphones. Performance was generally fine across the board. Apps loaded within a decent amount of time. They performed well after they loaded. Boot times are pretty fast as well. So overall performance is quite good for a tablet like this. Wi-Fi performance was decent with 5 GHz speeds of up to 300 megabits per second. I was getting around between 72 and 96 megabits per second when copying files from a computer that I have hardwired to my Netgear AC1450 router. Sometimes I noticed that after prolonged periods of standby, the tablet wouldn't want to turn back on, or it would turn back on to the lock screen, but the touch display wouldn't actually register any of my taps, so I had to give it a forced restart. Things were fine after it booted up, but this did happen several different times, and I did use a clean install of Windows when I first took the tablet out of the box. I actually went into the recovery mode and reinstalled Windows from scratch. Battery life was another concern of mine going into this tablet, but while I didn't log specific battery life hours or numbers, to me that's generally not representative of what an average consumer would do themselves, I was really happy with how long this battery lasted. It should easily get you throughout the day with average usage, including loading a bunch of web pages, watching some web or local videos, playing some games, and adjusting the brightness throughout the day to conform to the different lighting conditions that you might be in. Standby time was mixed. I noticed that sometimes if I left it off overnight, or unplugged overnight rather, I would wake up and the battery was dead. It wouldn't turn on. After I plugged it in and it turned back on, it would have just a couple of percent left because it just started charging. Sometimes I didn't lose that much battery at all. I'm not sure what that is because in all occasions I did close all of my running applications before I went to bed, or whenever I stopped using it for a while I would always close the apps out, but I'm not sure if this is a Windows thing or if there's something wrong with my tablet, but it is a little bit disappointing to sometimes wake up to the tablet not having any battery life left. So if I were you, I would recommend just leaving it plugged in all the time so you don't ever have to worry about this sort of thing happening. Because the tablet has a cellular modem, I did test it with AT&T's LTE network. If you do decide to get this for AT&T and unlock it, you can use it on T-Mobile here in the US using their LTE, their refarmed 3G spectrum, as well as their Edge. It's also available for Verizon. And while most of my usage was on Wi-Fi, things were just fine when using AT&T's LTE network. Of course, speed and performance will vary greatly depending on location and a wide variety of other factors, but for the most part where I am, performance was just fine and it was almost as though I was on Wi-Fi. You couldn't really notice any difference between the two unless you were to download or upload raw files. Otherwise, cellular performance was just fine. Next up is camera quality, and with most tablet cameras, they aren't really that great. They're good for quick snapshots of things without too much regard for quality, and that's certainly the case with the Lumia 2520. I best see this camera being used for quick video calls and emergencies, but nothing really more than that. As you can tell by some of the sample photos, the camera really isn't that great. If you do have a smartphone in your pocket, chances are that's better than this tablet camera. Videos also weren't that good, as you can tell in the sample video coming right up. These were all taken with the stock Windows RT camera app, but Nokia does have their own called Nokia Camera, which basically gives you more shooting options, but shouldn't really affect camera performance or quality too much. In conclusion, the Lumia 2520 is a great tablet. It has a good combination of quality hardware as well as the software, and overall it has good performance, battery life, and the operating system is fun and easy to use. It's not the cheapest tablet around, but I think that you won't be complaining much about the price once you actually start using it and enjoying it. I'm fairly critical when it comes to performance and general usability, but I found myself enjoying the Lumia 2520 far more than I originally planned, and hopefully you will too if you do decide to pick this up. That's it with this video. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback about this or anything else, feel free to leave those down below in the comments area, but that's it with the video. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you all very soon.